Everybody, welcome Wednesday lunch bar here at the Real School. We've got our part two of our investor series today with our investment panel. Very excited about that, learning all things flipping and investing in homes and all that. But before we get there, we are here with First American Home Warranty's very own Laura Wilkes back again. You know the dream on the floor.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I feel like I haven't been here in a little while, but I know I signed up, so we're here and there.
So we're grateful, and we never know what to expect with summer. Like our Feb, obviously, finally just said school's out for summer because the agents are all on vacation.
People are just walking outside and like, nope, turn around.
Well, fair. It is 90 degrees. But the cool thing is all this is going to be on our YouTube channel. It gets sent out to hundreds of agents and stuff. So regardless, it's all good information. It's going to live on forever.
Okay, awesome.
Still tell us all the things like it's the first time about the home warranty.
Yeah. Home warranty 101, start it in 10 minutes-ish.
If you don't mind.
I want to share.
There you go. Perfect.
I want to share these, but we can do it afterwards. I'm Laura Wilkes. I am the area manager from First American Home Warranty. My coverage area is from Raleigh, south, all the way east to the coast and Myrtle Beach. So if you're selling there, I'm your contact. My phone number is on brochure that you have to get. I have them over here as well. So they're always in the office, and I'm happy to send them to you in PDF. Does everybody kind of understand what a home warranty does? How it's different from homeowner's insurance? We're going to cover the major systems in your house instead of things like, I don't know, if there's a flood, your roof needs a replacement, that's going to get homeowner's insurance. So luckily it's peak season, so we always reference this. You've probably heard this before, but plumbing, electrical, appliances, cooling, and heating. That's something to think about when you're thinking about what does a home warranty cover. Okay. Now within that, of course, we've got like septic coverage, pool coverage, spa, limited roof leak, all of that is in this brochure.
Well, and Laura, correct me, and I don't mean to interrupt you if I'm wrong, but kind of the way my brain separates it for our clients is a home warranty is there as like preventative or proactive things for your home, and your homeowner's insurance is reactive. When something happens to your home, that's when they jump in. But just because your HVAC is starting to get to the end of its life and there's wear and tear and things like that, the homeowner's insurance isn't going to jump in. But if you have a home warranty on your home, that's when you can start calling for that.
Exactly. Perfect. And you can get up to 18 months of coverage if you start with your listings and you put free coverage on there during the listing period. The seller's covered during that period, and then it also transfers a full year to the buyer at closing, which is awesome coverage. We are actually, for First American, we are the only company that doesn't charge for refrigerant replacement. So if we're coming out to the house for the homeowner, they have a leak. We repair the leak with our service call gate, and we replace the refrigerant as well. No additional charge. So that's a huge savings, right? Like we are looking for trust, protection. When an appliance goes out, we replace them. We're going to try to repair things, obviously, before we replace them. With the EPA mandate that I'm sure everyone's heard about in January, with them trying to use refrigerant that isn't as toxic. All the old refrigerant, we already have replacements for that. We have everyone covered. We're not going to change our HVAC coverage for the EPA mandate. So all of our homeowners are still covered as they were before. So taking out a claim process, I guess we could go through that really quick. We have a homeowner center that everyone can take out a claim online, or you can call the 1-800 number, both for 24/7, 360. They will be assigned a contractor almost immediately, and they will come out to the house based on the homeowner's schedule and repair or replace. We do not have to get approval. Our technicians do not have to get approval from us for most repairs, so they don't have to come out, see what the issue is, go back, see if it's covered. They can just do it while they're there. I was just telling Colleen this, that in preparation for this summer, earlier this year, First American actually tripled their HVAC techs. Worked out really well, considering what we're going through right now. I'm not going to say that it's easy right now. This is like, I think, like the worst day. Honestly, yesterday was pretty bad. But, other than that, once, you pay that, the homeowner pays that $95 service call fee. And we make the repair replacement. If for some reason we cannot get, this is always a question that I get, if for some reason we cannot get a technician out in our promised time, the homeowner can do an outside service. And we
That's
reimburse
huge.
them.
Mhm.
So something else that we can do by having my phone number, if your homeowner ever has an issue with that and they're like, they don't know the system and process yet, and they reach out to you, and then you reach out to me, I can also offer them like a window unit or something like that, just until someone comes out. Either way, if it's, an extra day or whatever. So that's why it's good to have these relationships.
Yeah, that's huge. Really.
Yeah. And she brought yummy sandwiches for everybody for lunch. So those that are online, you're missing out. But
Yeah.
everybody that's here, we really appreciate you
Yeah.
bringing lunch and all that, being just a good partner of everybody at
Yeah.
Real Estate Advisors.
We appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, you're welcome to stay for our investor panel. If you would like to learn about real estate investing, I'm going to go ahead and ask our panelists to come on up while I rearrange furniture real quick. I'll stand because I can't sit still. Y'all come on down. Don't be shy. Oh.
I will.
Thank you. I need a microphone, a mic stand, and all the things. So, welcome for several of y'all. I know it's your first time at the Real School. So again, this is a passion project for me, just to help educate agents and what they really need to know about selling real estate, not just how to get leads and how to show homes, but everything in between. And a big piece of that is helping people invest. So I had the luxury with working with you guys, and then on the investment side, I personally have done one flip and one rental and don't ever want to do either again. So I'm excited to hear it from y'all's lane and what works. And again, I did not have any knowledge with what we were doing. So yeah, I'm excited to learn from you guys too. This is what you do all day, every day. So without further ado, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and then just tell us how you got into investing. So I'll start with you, Brantley.
My name's Brantley Baker. Got into investing probably about 13 years ago. Went to a meetup down in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I just met some investors, and kind of rolled from there. Just network, got into learning how to invest, just getting information, and just took off from there.
Chris,
I'm Chris Papadopoulos.
we won't make you spell that.
Yeah, you can tell you get a cookie. I've flipped a lot of houses, and then we own a bunch of multifamily apartments in Raleigh and Fayetteville, and commercial warehouses and mobile home parks, and pretty much a little bit of everything. So I've been doing it for about 10 years, and love every day. So it's always fun. It's always something different.
Awesome. Robbie?
I'm Robbie Valance. I'm with Stockton Mortgage. Been living in this area for about 25 years, helping investors, helping primary purchases. I've done a couple of rental properties myself, and glad to be here to share some knowledge with you guys.
All right. Well, we are very relaxed here at the Real School. Like I said, we are just here to help educate everybody. So I'm just going to throw out some questions, and you guys feel free to answer what you feel comfortable with. But I think the first one is for anybody who's in the room that is thinking about investing, or anybody who's working with an investor, what do you feel like is one of the most important things they should know before purchasing their first property?
What a good question. There's so many wrong things you do.
Yeah.
Couple things that pop up to me is just evaluation of the property, what the true value is, and where you got the property from, where the information come from. Properties come from so many different people and facets these days that you don't want to necessarily rely on, and I'm trying to be mean, but the information that the person give you that provided the property. We probably touch 30 to 35 properties a day, and as far as giving values, and a lot of times a value will be presented to us on what the ARV after repair value would be, and sometimes it's substantially off. So understanding you don't ever want to buy a property, your end number being 300,000 is what you think you're gonna retail it for, and then you end up, only being able to sell it for 260.
Hopefully everybody just wrote ARV down, because when you're talking to an investor, you sound smart. So same thing with the investing world, the commercial, they all have their own language. And I myself am excited to just learn a little bit more of that, because, in my mind, we're giving them a CMA of what we think the house is worth when it's finished, and they've got to back into it. So that's really great. Chris, you might.
What I'm saying right now is that, well, I'm not even looking at the past 6 months. Look, we're looking at what's pending right now in the market and just trying to see, because for comps, because like I've got stuff that I've sold 2 houses on the street for 300 grand. I can't get 270 for the same house right now. I sold those 6 months ago. It's crazy. Like in all parts of there, like I'm 30K below on some houses that I thought we were going to sell for like 300. We're dropping to like 260 just to sell them. And now I'm at the point to where we're just trying to do. So me personally, like what I'm looking at right now is like nothing passing the market, and I'm even knocking 10 grand off of those ARVs. It's really, it's a conservative market for an investor, because it's just like, I think this thing came out yesterday, it was like Wade County's down like 5% or something like that.
Which doesn't sound big until it doesn't. I mean,
That's why you profit on some of these deals.
right, right.
If you're buying a 300K house sell 450 with like 40K margins, and you're off 10%, like you're making like I got a couple houses we're breaking even on, we're just being honest, but like, I bought them maybe a year ago. So anyway, so I'm just giving you the realistic aspect of things right now. And there's still a lot of good stuff in the market, but I'm seeing that the tighter margin things, like what we used to be, hey, 25K, we're gonna try and make 40, 50. I'm having to buy a house like 40, 50K margins to make 25, 30, which is to give ourselves 5, 10K for closing costs and another 5K price drop. So yeah.
So Robbie, along those lines, what are you guys seeing as far as values across the board, like in the mortgage world? I'm sure you get to see all the appraisals on the back end. So are you?
We are seeing valuations starting to reduce a little bit. We're seeing a lot more time on the market. What you guys are seeing, seller concessions are becoming a realistic thing again. Marketing times have really grown over the last several months.
So that's a good point for you guys. So what is an ideal marketing time? Again, I feel like deals that I would have brought you a year ago and deals I'm bringing you now look completely different. So what is that kind of make or break for you guys? I mean, I know we all know speed is the number one factor. You want it to sell as fast as possible, but where are some of those make or break numbers for you guys? Like 30 days, 60, 90?
I'm have 6 month holds. I don't know what you budget.
90 days is where we want to be. I found in our business that the most important thing, like you just said, is time. It is the most important thing. It'll kill a deal in a heartbeat. And it's killed several deals for us. That's why one thing we do, talking about and adding on to what Chris said, evaluating properties, I don't go and comp back 6 months anymore. I'm looking what's going to pending and pending only, because I need to see what somebody's willing to pay for a house right now within the last 30 to 45 days. Where some people run comp 6 months, but that's a totally different market. So we really want our stuff going in 90 days, because the cost of holding, just the headache of it being there, the ability not to buy something else because you've got your money tied up in that, it just adds up after a long time.
So I don't know about Brantley, but I get like fix and flip lending, which is 85%, and it's about it's about $2,000 a month to hold a house. So I used to underwrite 3 months, 90 days, and now I'm underwriting 6 months, because I had a couple of houses that have gone and gone. So that's an extra 6, 7, 8 grand that I can't pay for the house now. Just that I'm packing off, because I've had a couple just get relisted or fought a lot, people are backing out for a loose doorknob right now.
I was just wondering, like, what would you compare this era of the market to previous years? Like, what era? 2010?
No.
Anything?
Hey, I'll stand up here and say I'm fax machine on real estate years. This is not 2009. Doesn't even feel like 2009, but I'll let y'all answer that.
So I read this thing in TBJ last night. So it's like, basically, they said this is the highest inventory that our nation's had since 2013. Like the biggest difference between sellers and buyers, which it feels like it.
It does.
It's admired, but
well, I mean, media drives more now than ever. I mean, and a lot of people aren't buying because of lack of reality, or just it's ignorance per se. But I mean, they're watching the news, they're on social media. They got no clue what's really going on in today's society, and so I mean, just like the weatherman can shut down a school, media can cause a headache in the marketplace. And
I
that's not
saw somebody post on Facebook or one of the social media sites. Buyers do not realize that this is their market right now.
Their market.
They don't realize it.
100%.
I mean, you can come in, like, I had a guy, they were like, we're not gonna buy unless you get 10 grand closing costs. I had a house, for market 4 months, like, all right, yeah, you're welcome.
But you
Well,
know,
Yeah, we're not gonna
You want a fence?
Yeah, I'll do it. I'm literally doing whatever they want.
we're seeing that on the agent side too. Just last month, I put 2 under contract in the same week and the offer came in and she was like, please don't kill me. And it was 10,000 loan. I was like, I'll do my best. And I was like, I know, thank you very much.
And like,
Let's go.
I'm even seeing like, I don't know, New Western, all those companies, like, there's a condo list, a property list for 300. They're coming in at like 200 and getting these things like, and I'm getting it, it's listed on MLS and I'm getting it for like 220. I'm like, we just got people down 100 grand. But like, that wasn't really a thing to go on MLS and get these huge, I'm talking
Right,
huge price
right,
drops like
right.
6 to 12 months ago. At least I didn't.
And part of that
Yeah,
we're
that's fine.
seeing, yeah, part of that we're seeing, just so y'all know, from an industry standard, is some agents are still comping them based on 6 months and 12 months because that's what the sellers want to hear. You know, all the sellers are mad that they missed it. They missed it 3 years ago. We're not there anymore. I'm sorry. But if you're doing CMAs today, just like they're saying, you should also be really strongly looking at pendings because that is what your competition is going to be in the next 60 days.
And I think that's a great script too when you're sitting with sellers because, well, yes, by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the investors that I work with have told me that they aren't even relying on 6 months comps. They aren't relying. So you're taking that expertise and saying, these other experts I work with are telling me this. So,
Mhm.
kind of puts more weight on that. I like that.
Mhm. So let's spin this a little bit. What are common mistakes you see first time investors make? I mean, other than not knowing their numbers, what mistakes do you see investors make? Go ahead.
One of the ones all of us have made.
Yeah,
You know?
100%.
Just valuing, just incorrect evaluation of property. I mean, I don't know as far as return, so there's people out there putting $400,000 in a house and making $5,000 or $10,000. And you talk to some people, hey, you just made $10,000, but I had to put $400,000 in to do that. Or if you lose, I mean, it's like, okay, like you said, I'm gonna do it one time, we're not gonna do it again. So evaluation and then understanding older houses is probably a big thing. Once you start to peel something away on an older house, the dollar ching 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 ching, it just continues to rise. So people that buy older houses usually end up in headaches. And we see that a lot where investors will come to us to buy something. And I'm like, unfortunately, I can't double your bad decision because I'm not gonna make the same bad decision you did. It's just uneducating and that's why we really push for investors to work with real estate agents. That's a big push for us is because just knowledge and then contractors as well. Just understanding the cost of doing business. I mean, the paint and floor house, 2,500 square foot, what's that, 12 grand, 10, 12 grand?
People think it's like, oh, 5 grand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, those numbers have changed too.
Yeah.
If you've got a painting quote lately, they are not working for peanuts. That's for sure. They are.
Are
Yeah.
you guys like knee deep in these flips, or do you guys have a good team of contractors that you guys try to just stay on the outside, or is that part of the reason you got into it because you do enjoy that aspect of it?
I don't enjoy swinging a hammer about one bit. No, I don't. I'm not touching the property at all.
You're just hands off.
It's just
100%.
numbers
Gotcha,
from
gotcha.
myself.
Chris, is that same for you?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I mean, yeah, you can't do it. You have to, the job's from behind a computer. Yeah, realistically, to make money at scale. Yeah.
Well, and I was just going to say that's a great question and a great segue for anybody looking or is working investors. You need to know what type of investor you have because what they're looking for may be completely different than what they're telling you because they're right. They're sitting behind a desk. They're crunching numbers. They're looking at percentages, performance, all that. But like Brian and I, one of the reasons that we did a flip and we did a rental, we didn't love it because we're not hands-on people either. We're not contractors. We don't have. And so I had one that we were in multiple offers. One of my local builders, it's a long story, but he was interested in some lots and then there was this flip in the same neighborhood and he was like, let's put in an offer on that. And as soon as it hit, it was multiple offers. And we looked at it and just as it sat needing repair, it was already priced at like market value and it needed a solid $25,000, $30,000 worth of work. Easy. And so we were like, all right, we'll put a bid in it, but we think it should be at this. And I finally had to tell him, I said, you're competing with all the investors, like this is all they do all day long, and they're in there doing the work physically, swinging a hammer. You're not gonna be able to compete from a number standpoint, and they're going to overpay because they're turning money at this point. And would you agree, a lot of your investors that are physically doing the work, they're more or less doing it for cash flow purposes. They're turning money, they're getting the construction loans, but they're like a lot of builders, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just different. You've got some of those investors, and those are the investors that typically do 2 or 3 at a time because that's all the manpower that they have because they're physically doing it. Their profit margins are probably a little bit higher, but maybe not much because they're the ones that are willing to go in and pay for. I'm looking at Kelly because she helped me comp this property. Sorry. They're willing to pay full price or above because they're just going to be earning money. So that's something good to look at too when you're looking at properties that you're thinking of bringing to an investor, or if you're working with an investor that you need to know. Like, I'm probably not going to send them a 1910, strip it to the studs, because there's just never going to be enough margin in that. But there will be for an investor who wants to do the work themselves. Is that fair
Absolutely.
assessment? Is the lending any different, Robbie, if they're doing the work themselves versus subbing it out?
Absolutely.
I thought it might be.
I don't do any of the fix or flip things. They may allow the buyer to do some of that work themselves. We do investor renovation products, and they're going to want you to have contractor bids and depending on the degree of renovation, they may not have to be a licensed contractor. They just have to be in that field of work. So if they don't exceed, I think it's 39,000 now to have a GC.
Yeah.
They can do some of that work with just a regular provider, a handyman, so to speak. But they don't want the homeowner doing it themselves.
So, and I'm assuming they just have to submit kind of a proposal of what the scope of work is, and that there's going to be contractors that are doing it.
Correct. On a letterhead or some sort of invoice, you want a breakdown of the labor costs, the materials costs. We also put in a contingency reserve in there, which we add to the loan because everything tends to go over, and depending on the time of year, material costs are fluctuating so much, especially in the warmer time of the year. So.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Please, I want to ask you all. So have you all dealt with where do you get your properties from when you purchase them? I'm assuming, they may be off market. So have you heard of Hubzu, and have you investor lift and things like that? Are you familiar with those things? And what's your opinion on utilizing a wholesale? If you're getting information from a wholesaler that's advertising those things, have you ever dealt with that or anything?
And that's a good one. You get a lot of
Yeah.
different out of state that are just cold dialing, getting properties under contract and then selling them. And they not necessarily as familiar with the market and understand all the dynamics. So it's perfect because you get a guy from California, you just log this contract and never. So that's a good option to buy. I mean, we buy like 100 houses a year off investor lift just from wholesalers.
Okay.
Like I don't buy do any maybe one or 2 months off MLS, and then the other people like wholesale at Brantley and they're like that. Who do you buy from?
Mostly realtors. I'd say 99% of my business comes directly from realtors. We're active from the coast of North Carolina all the way to Charlotte and then to South Carolina, and we do some in Florida too. And it's all realtors. I have not. So Chris does very well on the wholesaler part of things. He has a great relationship built there. I have not been able to do that because I just maybe time and trust. I don't come across a lot of wholesalers that I can trust. They're and not say maybe I'm just not dealing with the right ones. But I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, they're looking, they have nothing in the game, they have nothing to lose, right? And they're just pushing properties. They're pushing properties. I will get the same property 4 times a day from a different wholesaler at 4 different prices. So then I don't even know what to do. I don't even know what to deal with. So, but realtors, it's something about dealing with realtors that I love. That they just always done me right. Maybe it's because they have something to lose. They have a license. They have to uphold themselves. I mean, whenever I get a house from a realtor, not always, most of the time it's cleaner. They've already gone through an attorney or they've dealt with it. It's cleaner. Where if I get stuff from wholesalers, there's 155,000 liens on it, and there's 700 heirs somewhere, And so then it's,
There's a reason somebody's trying to get out from underneath it.
Yes.
So that's a really great point. So one of the things that one of the reasons I've been able to work with them, and I think to Brantley's point, and where there's an opportunity for all of us realtors in the room and online is, typically when we have a situation that we can bring to them, it's because we're dealing with somebody with a hardship. And so we are there as an empathetic person. We're listening to what is their why. Why are you willing to take less for your hard-earned equity? And we understand there's something that they're going through that time is not going to be their friend. Time is going to be their enemy. And so for that reason, we've had a really great run with investors saying, listen, I've got somebody who's going through a divorce, or I've got an estate situation and they just need the money to be able to pay for funeral costs, or they just need to be able to get out of this situation and do this. What do you feel like this house is worth and what can we do? And then, we get to take it a step further with some of them and say, listen, this person may need to rent back for 3 months while they find a place for them and their child. Is that okay? This is not something you get from wholesale, and that's not something you can get on a website, and I think that's why as realtors, it's so important that we are a leg for them, because it's a leg for the people that we're trying to help. Yes, at the end of the day, it's ingrained to us to get them the highest and best dollar. But what if the highest and best dollar is the fastest dollar that they can use to do whatever they need to do?
Amen right there. I amen that all day long. That's one thing that realtors do get stuck in is
Sometimes to a fault, because I'm known for saying, I'm like, I know this is what it looks like, but I swear it's not going to be that bad, and I swear we'll sell it in this and dot dot dot. But I think it's important to go back to the why we're all doing this and the relationships that we're building for people. And I've had times where I've taken offers, someone like, oh, that's just insulting, and I'm like, what is our other offer? Do you want to let the bank have your equity, or do you want to get out of this situation without a foreclosure? Do you want to get a little bit of equity? Is it worth it for you not having to move for 3 to 6 months because this person's willing to let you rent back? We have to dig deeper and find out that person's why, and then take it to them and let them help us solve that problem. Because we know right now in this market, we're dealing with one right now where it's a great house in a great location. Her neighbors suck, and they put their house on the market. In the last 6 months, 5 of them have sold for $30,000 less than they had to, but the market dictated it. Of course, I'm blaming it on the neighbors. It's not really their fault. They had to sell for whatever reason. And here she has this appraisal from January that says her house is worth X. And I'm in MLS, and I'm like, unfortunately, just in the past 6 months, it has gone down over 5%. And it's a hard conversation to have, but we're looking at her position as a whole and saying what is most important. And that's why I like having local investors. Every realtor in here probably gets 18 texts a day, and they're trying to make it sound friendly now. They're like, hey, you got any properties you can slide my way? Sal. And I'm like, I know who you are. It's the first time you've ever texted me in my life. That you're not a real person. It's a bot that's working for these wholesalers. That's no. But we are getting hit from all sides of investors, and that's what it is. They're trying to take an opportunity and exploit it necessarily, but just know that that's out there, because that doesn't mean that it's not the best thing for your person. If speed is the most important thing, but I think it's important to know that you're working with somebody that if you've got your people tied up now, we start making plans, just like with any other buyer that we work with, they're going to follow through and do what they say they're going to do, that our seller's not going to be left more emotionally and financially strained than they already are. Sorry, I'll get off that soapbox, but that is it. Yeah.
So to add to that, we're sellers, right? That's what we do, is we sell. And obviously we want to sell at the highest dollar. But what's the most important thing is time, right? Like he just said, we're losing money on houses. We're breaking even because time is most important. So the top dollar is something that I find that top dollar is most important. I'd say 7 times out of 10, if not, 6 times out of 10. So
segue here, and I'm going off script, so it is what it is. But because in my mind, I guess my brain is automatically thinking, oh, well, you guys are investors. So if you have these properties sitting that you haven't been able to flip, you're just going to turn them into rental. Right. So tell me why.
They don't make any money with the rental. Single family homes don't really make scale. One, nor do they make money as a rental. Right now, with the current rate environment, I can't turn the house to really.
But would everybody else in the room that were realtors, wouldn't that be your next thought? Well, like, it's okay if they can't sell it right away. I mean, maybe if they can't flip it, they're just going to turn out and rent it. Because I just, in my brain for years and years and years, lumped investors into the same group. Like, well, they're just trying to buy property, hold property, term property, whatever. But that's not the same, because it doesn't fit in your business model. So I guess expand on that a little bit so that we don't have this preconceived notion when we take you guys something or we're talking to our clients as to why that's not just beneficial. So I hear what you say.
It's just simple math, like the mortgage exceeds the rent right now.
Hmm.
When we buy. Pretty done.
Yeah,
When we buy flips, we use all cash, so we don't do your loans, but we don't want to tie up our cash more than 90 days. So, you know, to do that, then you have to, okay, if I'm in my cash, and I got to pull my cash out to go buy something else. That means that I've got to go get financing, and sometimes that's hard, I mean, especially if you want to do it at, like Chris, at a good rate.
Mhm.
Hard money is expensive money.
Mhm.
So when we underwrite flipping. That's got to go. I mean, we can't afford to hold it.
So what would be ideal properties in your mind? If we're coming across these in the market, like what would you say, like if it checked these 3 boxes, then we'd be ready to roll?
piggyback on what you said, 1950s and newer. The old houses are just loaded bag usually. Probably under 700K ARV, which means you're going to cap out buying like around 300-400. I realize that in the higher price incomes right now, I'm seeing instead of like a 10K price drop, like a 50K variant. It's just hard to underwrite those because if you want 50K, they're just, so it's kind of stopping out there. But really, like the bread and butter is like double wides are the best thing ever.
Double wide.
Double wides. I mean, probably half of my business is double wide. I can crank them out in like 3 weeks. They look beautiful. They're like a single family home, but they're 2,000 square feet and they're $250,000.
I feel like 90% of the deals we've done together, every time we get a double, I'm like, Brantley goes, what I got? Oh, yeah.
Nothing's more exciting than
That's probably.
they're the best. They're just easy and that's affordable right now.
In fact, we're buying lots and putting new double wides on them to sell just because of the affordability model.
I've got a developer who's doing the same. If we have D lots, then we'll just put mobile homes on them and sell them because so much it's hitting that under 250 market price point. And now the lending, if you want to talk to that just for a second, the lending has started to loosen up on manufactured homes as well.
Oh, considerably.
Yeah.
Considerably. Conventional investor rehab, we will do manufactured homes for those products, and that's was unheard of several years ago. So, not to mention, it was years ago when I had to have a brick perimeter foundation. That's gone away.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so a lot of things have changed as long as they're set up to HUD specifications, conventional, or not HUD specification, but manufacturer specification. Conventional will lend on these properties.
Mhm.
Hardback skirting is acceptable to FHA. It doesn't no longer have to be brick perimeter. So, a lot of things has opened up, but, you know, most importantly, from now these guys are floating cash and stuff like that. But if you've got investors that need financing to be able to buy a double wide with a rehab loan, that's going to put them in a great position if they don't have the cash to work with. You know, and just a little bit off filter of the double wides, but just for new investors in general, they really need to examine their own position and their equity of their existing property. That is a great way to get started with equity line of credit, something of that nature. You're not fighting the elevated rates. You can do that a few times off of that, create a cash flow for your business or your investment side of your portfolio, and then let that begin to fund your future endeavors and put you in the position that these guys have been able to put themselves over time.
That was literally going to be my next question. So thank you, Robbie, because I know there's a lot of agents in here because as realtors, we're told, oh, we see your real estate. How many properties do you own? And I tell you all the time, I'm like, I don't own any residential properties and I don't want to do it. I don't want to have residential rentals, but like when I mentor Sharon Evans, she has like 200, like no big deal. She has, I mean, every once in a while, she's like, hey, I saw this. I think I might buy it. And I'm like, I wish I just walked around with that kind of gumption. I don't have it, but for people in here, you know, who investing in real estate is going to be one of your long-term goals, because fun fact, we don't get retirement or anything like that. On how you're building up your future net worth. I love that idea. And we've been talking about it just on our team. Like the people that don't want to move right now because their interest rate's 2.73, they're sitting on a pile of equity. Are they just going to let it sit? You know, so we're trying to convince them, buy a rental property, buy a second home, do something with that. So if there's anybody in the room that's thinking like, I've been thinking about want to buy my first investment property, now is the time to ask those questions. Like, what do I do? Don't be me. I bought my first flip. And it's also hard, again, when you don't do the work yourself. because the more my contractor got in, he was like, well, it's eat up with termites. And I'm like, well, I've got to disclose all that. So I might as well rip it out. Next thing you know, I thought it was paint, carpet. We're down to the studs of this house. Now we're having to redo the siding because it's masonite siding. So if there's termites in behind the masonite, guess what? I mean, it was just an absolute disaster. Now I look at it and I think I still kick myself because now it would sell for like 350. And I think we sold it for like 119. Couldn't give it away at that time. Anyway, don't do what I did. But you know, if you have any questions like how do I get started, this is the perfect time to ask. Yep, great.
So I wanted to ask you because I don't know if you do commercial properties as well as far as investment. So what would you say would be, tell me what type of commercial property it was, whether even 1 to 4 is fine, because I've participated in those type of transactions too. But what would you say would be the difference in between what it is? Have you ever purchased or did anything like with a building or maybe just a spot that like a commercial office or something like that? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bunch of multifamily in everywhere. I mean, those are great. Right now, I mean, obviously apartments are
Mhm.
going to be most inflated. I mean, people are going to, most of my stuff's like $1,200-$1,300 rents. It's not going anywhere. It's the bottom of the market and it's entry. So if someone's looking at $3,000-$2,500 mortgage, they're going to come to a $1,300 rental and it's going to be more affordable. So, I mean, multifamily residential is good. I have some single families that I've had for years that have a low basis and those, but they don't really make single family is hard to scale. To get 200 single families, I imagine Sharon has probably had these for years and her base is probably super low. Now it's hard to take single families and scale it. So going back to the commercial, if you buy a 20 unit, you can be into it for like 100 a door and you cash flow maybe $200-$300 on per door. You know, you can make $5,000 a month off one property, which is scalable and you can do it because you're not getting hurt because it's all under one place, right? If you get 2 or 3 people that move out. So that's good. And then what I've been doing also is like contractor storage utility buildings, like just big metal warehouses. Like about in Fuquay around the corner, we bought some basically 3,000 square foot buildings individual, and they were just renting them out to contractors. They're storing stuff in there. There's no maintenance. It's a concrete slab with metal walls and a roof, and there's nothing else to do with it. So those are awesome. There's not a lot of supply of those, but there is like some product coming in the market. So that's good. The mobile home parks. But I mean, honestly, right now the biggest push is industrial and like flex, and then stuff like this is a lot being built out here in this market. I don't know if that kind of answer your question, like what you're going for.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's starting out, what would you say is kind of like an ideal project for somebody who's just getting started in the multifamily commercial
I mean,
realm? For those who don't want to go towards like residential rentals, like me too.
say someone with some decent like starter size. Like I bought 2 quads off Capitol Boulevard. And it was $1 million for 2 quads. So I had to put 250 down, which is some cash, but it's lit and I'm putting 100 into them and they're worth like 1.5. So it's a somewhat starter deal. I mean, if you bought a duplex or quad, something like that, that's gonna be the easiest to get into. Like the metal warehouses that we bought was 3 metal warehouses, 3,000 square feet each, and those were $400,000. I just turned all the units and then it appraised for 900 when we were done once I stabilized like a year later. So I'm trying to like, those are both pockets. I would say pockets, but they're beginner size deals that are doable for a first time person that you can, I'm sure someone will let you borrow money if there's double the amount of equity to be, if you don't have the cash to double the amount of equity there kind of thing. So
Yourself?
sorry.
Are you doing these yourself or do you?
Not much, but I'm trying to give you like examples of something you can do 100-200 grand, not million, like, you know, just something that's very, but now it's we're 1.5. We go back to the bank and I'm gonna get a loan for like 1,900,000 and I won't have any cash in. And then that gets one where you start rolling or you pull equity out. Like the one that paid the warehouse that we paid 400 for is probably gonna get like a loan for like 650. So I'll be able to pull some cash out of that, and now I can go buy a quad because there's 250 equity. So it started to like rolling. Yeah.
A lot of investors leverage their current properties to gain, to take some of that equity to purchase future properties. And so they're just leveraging one after the other.
I just think the partnerships on the commercial. I don't do a commercials like he does. Like I've got some money into some apartments. Just that was already there. The apartments by the Mescalita over in Clayton. So I've got some capital in there. But that was through a partnership with somebody that already had it set up, and they bought the land from Governor Hunt like 30 years ago or something crazy like that. So, but I own a quadplex, and that's all. Everything else. Building.
So for those type of properties, where do y'all usually find those? Because I'm imagining most of those aren't coming from realtors, and I think it's hard that they're probably just going to wholesalers. So where are you guys sourcing stuff like duplexes, quadruplexes, apartments? Where y'all sourcing those opportunities?
They just networks is where they come through. Like my little multifamily, I actually bought off the MLS. But everything else is just my circle and people bringing things into the circle.
I mean, we have a VA costs $1,500 a month, and we'll pull a list online, and he'll have a script, and he'll just go down the list and call everybody and say, "Hey, I know you own this property here. Would you be interested in selling it?" Super simple. He does not have an accent.
I'm very hard to challenge of finding somebody who doesn't have an accent. Yeah,
He's from Mexico, but he sounds American.
that's great.
And it's a 1-minute conversation, and it's literally, "Do you own the property? Yes or no? Would you be interested in selling? Yes or no?" That's it. And then we send it to us, and that like cuts a lot of the BS out. And then you can start calling. But that would be a low cost option. Other than that, is just you can get and see who's selling stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's just like real. You can go on and just call them. Put your information with them.
Well, and for the realtors out there, so for instance, I've got a quadplex right now that I'm comping. I'm going to send it to both of them. Say, hey, are you interested? If so, what does this look like? There's 4 tenants already in place. This is what they're paying for rent. You know, and like Brian and I were trying to run like cap percentages and stuff like that. And of course, they've had this forever. And one person pays this because they've been there since this time, and this person pays this because they put new floors in, and this. And so that makes that really hard. But what you have to realize is you can go in and you can change all those rental rates. So it may not look good on paper right now, but they're going to look at it as an opportunity. They're going to look at it as like, okay, these people are on month-to-month leases. I'm going to decide if it's worthwhile fixing it up, or is it already cash flowing enough to where I can just use it for equity. So you have to look at every project and every property as not just what it is, but what is the opportunity off of it. So we bought some stuff like downtown Benson. And no interest in running a restaurant, but you know what I know? There are caterers looking for commissary kitchens every day. And so as soon as I put my offer in, I called 2 caterers and I said, "Do you need a kitchen? Are you willing to pay this per month?" Great. On paper, we're done, and it's cash flowing itself, and it's just paying for itself. And then we can use the money we paid for that to buy something else. And so I think that's the biggest thing is as agents, when we're helping people in these situations, you know, my initial thought from the residential brain side is, oh, 4 tenants. I mean, if anybody's ever tried to sell a property on the MLS with tenants in it, it's miserable. Nobody wants to cooperate. The house is never in good condition. You're talking to every agent like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry what you're getting ready to run into." And so for me, I'm like, leave the tenants in, let me see what leases you do or do not have, and we're going to sell it just like that, so that they're stepping into it knowing, hey, there's somebody willing to pay at least this. If I want to get more, I can control that. Is that a fair statement? So, oh, you don't have to give tax or legal advice. However, what are some tax and legal things they need to make sure they are tied in well with their accountant and their attorneys to know this, this, and this? Because there's so many pieces of that puzzle that need to fit into the pieces of y'all's puzzles.
Yeah, just having a CPA that understands depreciation, you know, the tax benefits of a CPA that there's a line there and they'll code a line but not go over the line, so you can get the most benefit. That's probably one of the biggest things about real estate is the tax benefits when used correctly, and then the vehicle that, you know, sometimes it's not necessarily about cash flow, but about the savings at the end of the year, depending on, you know, your bracket and tax. So we have a bookkeeper, we have a CPA, they work together, just try to keep everything lined up, and at the end of the year, help us not pay the government as much as possible.
You know what's really not cool is working from January to April and paying taxes for that entire time. Because I had a 1 year in 21 when, you know, the market was hot and I had a really big tax bill, and I'm like, I'm never doing this again. So I started buying a bunch of stuff and depreciating it. But like, for example, like going back to that quad, say it's $1 million purchase price. If you do what's called a cost segregation study, which does everyone know what that is?
No, explain it.
It's basically it's where you take the property and bonus depreciate everything that you would have for 30 years in like the first couple of years. And so you get a lot of big write-offs. And so if you buy, for example, $1 million property, you get about roughly $100,000 net tax savings that year. So if you guys are realtors making a lot of money, but you're still paying 30-40% in taxes, you just bought one property that year, you could write off your entire tax bill. So it might just be a strategy where, hey, like I looked at a couple, I'm like, hey, this isn't that great. Like it was a warehouse building that had a lead, blah, blah. And I was like, but the tax savings honestly makes it a better deal because I don't have to pay taxes this year than it works. So as you start to make a lot of money, you'll be like, wow, this is also equally as important.
So you had this building and you said it was, you depreciated it. How do you prove that? You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like how I'm hearing what you're saying, but I don't know how to ask what I'm thinking.
So call a company and just do it. It's called a cost segregation study. What they do is they'll take out all of the fridge, the carpet, the appliances, like all the things in the property that you have to replace, and they depreciate it.
They being,
A company will do a study for you.
Oh,
Sorry, I'm
okay.
not using my words.
sorry, no, you're good. I'm just trying to follow.
So it's basically like you pay somebody for a study, like they'll charge you $1,000 to go to a study, and they'll bring you a thing and says the cost segregation study will say, hey, here's all the things in the 5-year bucket of depreciation, which is all things that wear quicker, like your appliances, your carpet, your paint, your light, like, and they basically say, okay, well, we're gonna depreciate that instead of over a long period of time. We're gonna depreciate it in the first year, and so you get a credit for that on your taxes that year. It's called a cost segregation study, and it's immediate.
But you have to realize you can't write it off again the next year. So it's kind of a strategy, for lack of a better word, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it real simple for us realtors because we get to write off our vehicles. You get to write off the depreciation of your vehicle, or you get to write off your miles. You can't do both. So he's depreciating his buildings all
Same thing.
up front versus waiting for the mileage to run itself out. Does that make sense? Is that a good analogy?
You do that study as soon as you take possession of
Yeah.
the property.
That's the year you take it.
Okay.
That's big savings.
Pretty
though.
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna be buying a commercial building. It's really cool. That way.
It really had a big difference on this building and that building, for sure, on our taxes when we done that here.
Yeah, that's big savings.
Stuff I wait for other people to tell me. So,
I'll take the word for it, Brian. Let's just say, we'll say.
So what are, so neither one of y'all really do rentals or short terms. What are some other investor opportunities that you've seen? Like, I know you sound like you have a very diverse portfolio. I know you've done some land investing, land flipping, things like that. So what are some other areas that people or agents that they're trying to get started or trying to help somebody? Because the amount of calls we get every day with their say, I'm an investor. And I'm like, cool, tell me about your investment portfolio. And that tells you a lot. Like, do I have a handyman who buys one house, spends 6 months getting it market ready, and now it's not even relevant to the comps I gave him 7 months ago before he bought it? Anyway, so what are some other investor strategies, would you say? And Robbie, feel free to chime in if there's a lot that you lend on that you're like, you know what I'm seeing a lot of people do now is this.
I mean, like you to their effect, I mean, the double wide's a real good way to go. You know, the cost of rehab's very reasonable based on the materials. And the appreciation that we have seen over the last, since COVID, I guess, is astounding. So, you know, going back to a first time investor, you know, if they leverage the equity in their own home, and like you said, there's not a lot of upside to long term or short term rental, but if they could put it in one of those categories, 24 months, they can sell that property and be in a whole different segment of investing. But so we're seeing a lot of that. The biggest thing that I'm seeing with investors we're having trouble with, I don't know how familiar you guys are with points and fees rules for the state of North Carolina, but when you do buy an investment property, as she had mentioned, the rates are elevated. There are LLPAs, which is loan level price adjustments through Freddie Fannie. And on investment properties, that creates points. Well, with North Carolina, you're capped on your points, probably more tighter than any other state in the nation. The federal's got their rule, North Carolina's got their rule. But you have to be real careful if you've got an investor that's trying to buy a lower priced property. Because with those lower priced properties, it may be an illegal loan to even do it. And the only way to combat that is to negotiate that seller to pay some closing costs. We can apply those seller closing costs to those points. And that's going to allow us to be able to push those.
What's the lower price? What's lower price considered?
Lower price is, and you probably depending on what market you're in, but I'd say anything south of 130.
How about
That
that?
well, you're in this.
Not much around, yeah.
I do stuff in Robeson County, or I do stuff in.
Roanoke Rapids,
Yeah,
that area, yeah.
There's still $50,000 properties out there, believe it or not.
Well, and that's what I'd say, just to that point, you know, I think if you're a novice investor or working with a novice investor, I think the first thing you have to do is go far and wide. I mean, you're not going to find typically a diamond in the rough right here in our hyperlocal market, because there's guys like this who are literally mining all day long to find those diamonds in the rough. So I think if you're trying to find somewhere to start, you may want to go into some of the outlying areas that you're also somewhat familiar with, so you know what's coming, but it's more of a long-term play, knowing that in those outlying areas, those are more of your invest to hold and to keep as a rental until the market comes that way, or hopefully kind of catches up. I mean, one of the first investors I first started working with, his market was here and Rocky Mount. And I was like, those are two very different areas. And this area has, I mean, obviously taken off. Rocky Mount's just now starting to get there. And I feel like he's been churning like the same 8 to 10 rental properties since I started working with him over 10 years ago. So there was another question I was going to ask, but I forgot it. So y'all call, give him another nugget real quick.
I will say, when I started investing 13 years ago, one of the cool things that I learned, went down to Atlanta many times to learn how to get people to owner finance to you or take over their mortgage payments. So I bet my first 20 or 30 deals were deals that I didn't borrow. And I'm just going to cut the lender out, but I didn't borrow any money from anybody. I went and found people that own their properties free and clear. They needed to sell, said, hey, you know, let's set up some owner finance. I'll give you a little bit down. Give you this. We agreed on what the percentage was, so we made up what the interest rate was going to be. I know there's 33 properties that I bought. I've never paid interest on because they asked what the interest was going to be. I was like, I'm very interested. And we just set up. You just fix their situation, whatever there is, and then there's something called subject to, which is kind of.
We're all getting those emails right now. It's subject to offers on every listing we put out.
About that, but it is a tool to utilize. We just bought 2 properties last week, subject to that there was no equity in, but it made sense to buy. So, but the owner finance thing is the coolest thing that I've ever learned in my life. It's, you know, go to Brian. Hey, Brian, you got a house? You don't want capital. Let's take that capital gains and spread it out over time. I'll pay you $400 a month. Then maybe I turn around, we come to an agreement. I'll do a 5-year balloon, rent it for a couple of years. And I never had to go and ask the bank to borrow a dollar. We made it happen. So I love buying stuff on finance. Still do it to this day just because it's exciting to me.
I sold 2 mobile home parks, and both of those were seller finance, because the seller's looking at it like it's starting to be a liability. I'm tired of the tenants calling. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. But then I'm showing them like you can make the same per month that you're getting in rent, or maybe a little bit more if you do seller financing, and they're fine taking it on as a liability and they're just going to own it down the road. Are you good with that? Yep. Okay, great. And just keep, I mean, especially for stuff like that, it really does work out to do owner financing, seller financing.
How does the seller, like, what happened? Well, not you, not saying you, but like, let's say it was random Joe Schmo and they come in and they're wanting to do a seller finance, but, you know, and they make this agreement and then they disappear.
So
You know what I'm
you
saying?
foreclose. That's why you have the attorney write it up. They put a note on it, a lien on it, just like the mortgage company does, and you foreclose. And so that's why it works out. There's a
Foreclose on the it's on in the investor.
and then they get it back.
So if you were the seller, is that what you're saying? Say if you were the seller, you have a deed of trust. All right, you're now Wells Fargo. Okay. So you're Wells Fargo, you're not the owner of property anymore. You're Wells Fargo, Bank of America. You're now receiving a monthly payment per that promissory note and that deed of trust. If I don't fulfill that, you do what Wells Fargo and Bank of America and state employee does, is you go through foreclosure proceedings. You foreclose now, the property goes up for auction, you can win it back.
So we looked at doing that with a couple properties that we had, just because it was like, I mean, a worst case scenario, if you get a large deposit down So like, there's a whole wave of investors that are doing this in our market too. So that's another reason I know that. So they'll come in and they'll say, we'll put, you know, 10, 15, $20,000 down. Will you sell or finance? This is what the payment's going to be. Everything's done, recorded, etc. If they walk away, you keep their money and you get the property back. And if the property has increased in value, which it should have, if it's anywhere around here, you get that gain as well. And so it literally can be a win-win-win. And a lot of people that do owner financing go in with really great intentions, and then life happens. So the builder that I used to work for, if we had a property that wouldn't sell, he'd offer seller financing. And I think we only had one that actually closed in seller financing. Otherwise, it was just a glorified rental, and he got a large deposit up front, and then at the end of the day foreclosed and got to take it back, put it back on the market and make more money off of it. So it's a very good opportunity, would say. Last question. Should they purchase in their own name, use an LLC, use a trust? Like, what is, again, I know you guys are not attorneys and accountants, but my first thought is obviously don't buy anything in your own name. Start some type of LLC and set it up that way. I know a lot of investors, depending on how they do it, they set up different LLCs with a property name, so it's separate. Some people, we have a lot of ours all under one umbrella. If we have a different scenario, we'll put it under this umbrella. So I recommend obviously having a good attorney that you know that can just set up a quick LLC for you whenever you have opportunities. Would you guys agree that's pretty much as far as you need to go initially?
Yeah, depending on if you need finance.
That's right.
Because your conventional products are not going to allow you to close in an LLC, which you can flip it after the loan's closed. Now, if you utilize a DSCR or something like that, they will close in an LLC up front.
That's good too.
So, I mean,
But
The way to get around that quick.
yeah, I was saying if it's in my personal name, I can get a lot higher loan leverage, even if it's an investment property, right?
so you're speaking on DSCR?
Like if I'm just gonna buy a rental property, it's in my personal name, as I understand, like say employees, for example, they'll do 15% down, and it would be less down, for example. Like there's you can put less capital compared to being an LLC, which is going to be like 25%, right?
Well, the GSCs are not going to close it in an LLC, period. Now, state employees is a whole different animal.
Oh yeah, I'm just in general.
Yeah.
As I understand, if it's in your personal, you get better terms and rate. I haven't done a personal loan in a while, but if you're starting, it might be cheaper and better.
Well, like I say, with a state employees credit union, they're a portfolio lender. So they don't have to answer to the higher powers, which is Freddie and Fannie. And that's what I meant when I was referring to GSAs. So they will not close it in an LLC whatsoever. But there is nothing written in your note or in your deed of trust that you can't flip it into an LLC after closing. We have clients do all that all the time. But
That won't trigger the due on sale.
if you're doing that,
That won't trigger the due on sale.
it will not. It will
Okay.
not. And that's just like if you were doing the buy, the rehab, rent, and refinance type of deal. Don't put it in an LLC because you're gonna have to pull it out to refinance it. So if that's your game plan, buy it, rehab it, rent it, refinance it, whatever order you want to do that in. And then once you're good with extracting that capital out for your next venture, then add it to your LLC portfolio.
If anybody else feels like they just talked at this level, that's how you know when you get a property, you just need to call one of them and say, hey, can you help me with them? Because don't do what I did and think, I know enough about real estate, just flip my own, or, you know, the rental property was very interesting as well. But anyway, all of that to say, we have really great resources in these guys. So you should not have to go it alone. If you have any questions, let them be a resource for you. If you're meeting with clients, and y'all, we're going to see a lot more of this, especially with people that bought in the last 3 to 5 years that were going to their houses and they're like, hey, I want to sell for this. And you're like, no. I know that's the situation, but unfortunately, that's not the market that we're in right now. So we're going to start having a lot more of these conversations. And that's why we felt like it was so important to get local investors in that can help people out of a tough situation. Don't just look at it, like, yes, this is their bread and butter, this is what they do, but we need to look at it from the side of how are we helping people? And sometimes that is getting them out of a tough situation where they can't sell, but we can be a great bridge for them until they figure out what that looks like. So thank y'all guys so much for all of your, are there any other questions? I know that was a whole lot of information in an hour. Perfect.
I'll work with like a bunch of, just like Brantley, you basically get a property, I need pictures. So if you guys are selling something needs for whatever situation, it's basically address and pictures, and I can just send you a number. So we do this like Mark Spain, like a Mark Spain buyer. things like that, to where the lead comes in, hey, what would you pay for this? You know, it was like she'd text me like, hey, $300,000 house. Yeah, it'd be 220 to 235. I can get more tighter on the numbers if you need to. That's even in the range because she's, you know, maybe it's too set. Like, so just things like that. And I'll give you guys all a card if that helps when you guys are coming across any situations and do some business. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate you.
That was amazing. Y'all built it? So, really?
This
You can take
here.
first.
So-
Qualified.
In the third one, so we don't have the third one. Listen to one, but I helped the builder buy this land like in reception when nobody else would look at it. He bought it, held on to it. And then kind of came to something about 10 years later. She built the company and invested in a building and that. Then we ended up just buying it outright. And then the third building,